Hi, and welcome to RNTrailGuide.com. I'm Trisha Frunzik, and today we're going to ask about those questions that you should be asking during the interview process. It's springtime and it's time for lots of change, so we have our new graduate nurses entering the field, and we also have a lot of our colleagues who are finishing up programs or just change of life and looking to move on. So they're also in the interview process. So let's talk about some things to ask during that interview. One great one to ask the hiring manager is, why is the position available? So as we know, of course, there's usually a lot of nursing jobs available, and we know that there's actually some vacancies occurring right now because maybe people are graduating and going into new roles. So it's a great one though to ask, because sometimes you find out a lot about an organization. Maybe they're having an entire ER expansion, so they're hiring up to this point to get ready for the ER expansion. Or, sometimes they're actually changing the status of a unit. So it was a non-monitored unit becoming a telemetry. So there can be a lot of different growth and shifts. So that will tell you a lot about, why is this position available. If the position previously had someone in that role, you could definitely ask, how long were they in that role and why did they leave the role? So, just gauging a little bit more maybe on the in-depth facts of that role. It will help you out a little bit. Things change, things move on, but, it's always a great question. What will my orientation look like in this position? So, if you're maybe a new graduate nurse, that you're probably expecting maybe an 8-12 week orientation, depending on what kind of unit it is. And that there'll probably be some classes offered, but you want to know, what does that look like? A lot of hiring managers have the paper right there. They know what things you're going to be asking when it comes to orientation. So they may be able to discuss them and lay them out. Or if you're maybe going into more of a senior role, it's going to look a little bit different. Maybe you're like, I'm really interested in some leadership development. Or maybe that you have a lot of spreadsheets you're going to be working on and you would love a class in Excel. So, what would that orientation look like for you? In conjunction with all of that, maybe what resources are available. Again, if you're like a new graduate nurse, you're probably expecting a residency program, but what does that residency program actually look like? Is it virtual? Is it in the classroom? Or maybe it's a hybrid? And how does it even look maybe if you're in more of a senior role? So what are resources available? Maybe you're in a new manager role. Are other managers going to be available to you? Do you have maybe an overall director who will be mentoring you throughout this time? Lots of transitions occurring. So, how is there going to be support for yourself? And maybe you need to support someone else too. Maybe there's another colleague coming into a similar role at the time, and it's always great to find someone to help support. And finally, how is your job performance going to be measured? So you usually have a job description, and then there's usually maybe a 6-month time frame for if you're a new hire, maybe looking at components on how it measure, and then probably at a year you may be evaluated. And that point it may be an annual at that on. But those are great questions to ask, how you're going to be measured and on what kind of components too. I know as an ICU nurse myself, some of the things I actually do get measured on are our unit goals. So they may be different things on infection rates and falls, or there may be an overall maybe there's something on staff satisfaction in your job performance. You'll never know, I guess, until you ask and find out. Some of those great things to avoid though, there's 3 basic key ones. One is those informational questions. So those are going to be more like your vacation, personal leave time. Hopefully those are answered by human resources before you talk with the hiring manager. Another one is some closed-ended questions, leading a lot to the hiring manager answering yes and no. A lot of times, that doesn't leave for a lot of conversation. It's pretty definitive answer at that point. And another one, the last one, is asking a lot of questions about yourself and, what you're going to get out of this role. I think a lot of times when I've done a lot of hiring in the past, maybe in some student roles, do I have to work this day or that day? And some things are always negotiable. Other things are like, no, this is, part of the actual job description this is the kind of shifts we would all work. So trying to avoid it all being about you, rather about how can I help and change the organization and how can it grow as I grow too. So those are just some quick and dirty questions to ask and to avoid during the interview process. So let's hit the nursing trail and let's keep on going and enjoy the interview process.